to Tycoons of Small Biz, a podcast where small business owners are celebrated as the backbone of the American economy. Each week, we introduce you to tycoons who share their stories and advice so that small business owners may learn from their experiences. Tycoons is powered by Backbone Planning Partners. Join us now as our hosts connect you to today's Tycoons.
Good afternoon, Tycoons, and welcome to today's episode of Tycoons of Small Biz. I'm your host here, as always, Austin Peterson, coming to you live from a balmy Phoenix, Arizona. The weather changed very quickly on us in the 60s last week, and it's going to reach 100 degrees today, so not super excited about that. But excited to have our guest on today. As you know, this is a podcast where we invite a new guest on every single week to talk about their business. And we definitely have a tycoon on the show with us today. We've got Ben Taylor coming to us from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Ben is founder and CEO of SoftLedger. So Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. Good to be here.
Yeah. So Ben, before we jump into the business side of things, why don't you just give us a little bit of background on you personally? Tell us about your family, what you studied in college, what you like to do, whatever you want to share with us personally. We'd love to hear it.
Sure. Yeah. Again, thanks for having me on. I'm originally from DC, and so that's where I studied accounting, and I'll kind of go through our story and kind of how we ended up here as a start. I started accounting at the University of Maryland. That's where I met my co-founder, Geoff Ostrega, and I went into accounting after school, did public accounting in the DC area at Ernst & Young, and then did financial reporting after that for a few years at Fannie Mae, so kind of big company auditing and reporting background. And then when I started SoftLedger, I was working for a company in Chicago, managing a few different areas in the accounting department for them. And then when Geoff and I started, Geoff is my co-founder, we moved to Santa Monica and went full time with the company. We were doing it nights and weekends for a little bit before that, but a little over 6 years ago, we did that full time, and yeah, we've been steadily growing over the business ever since. Last year, we've always been fully remote, but I really relocated to Pittsburgh, and yeah, we're love the city. That's why we decided to move back east. It was between here and DC, and Pittsburgh won out, and yeah, we're here on the north side. If you're ever in town, let me know.
Well, yeah, I will definitely be coming to Pittsburgh at some point. We had another guest on the show that has a story that's similar to yours, and created a technology company in Pittsburgh. And I've told him that I'm going to come out and see him at some point. But my son and I, you can see behind me, we're huge baseball fans. And Three Rivers is a place that we have not been to and would love to visit.
Well, it's a PNC Park now. Right. But it's a good, great venue, great view of the city too. We're having our offsite here in September, and we're going to a game.
That's awesome. So what do you have ties to Pittsburgh? What made you choose between Pittsburgh and Maryland?
So it was my wife's originally from here, and so we were kind of choosing a place where we both had family, and my family is I was born in Bethesda, it's right outside DC, and so yeah, we were choosing between those two, and we really liked Pittsburgh. And yeah, I thought that this was the spot, so we ended up choosing Pittsburgh. Yeah,
well, it's a great city. I don't know that the weather is as nice as it is in Santa Monica, but it is a great.
A lot of Santa Monica to Pittsburgh weather jokes. We've got it's but yeah, I never thought I'd say it, but after 5 years being there, a little over 5 years, I did miss the seasons. So we definitely have them here. So I guess, I like to say you could leave it to my wife and I to complain about the weather wherever we are. And so, you have this perfect year-round weather and you miss the seasons, that was by the end. Yeah.
Well, I spent some time in Southern California, and I did actually miss the seasons as well. I grew up outside of Salt Lake City, and so I was accustomed to all four seasons. Now, spring and fall were always really short, and summer and winter were really long, but you still got all four seasons. And so I did miss that, but gosh, I tell you, sunny and 75 every day is not bad either.
It was that, and the beach that's pretty tough to beat. Yeah, definitely missed that part.
Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah, I look forward to visiting Pittsburgh. I have a friend. We aren't super close. We were at at some point, but that was 25 years ago. He played 11 seasons with the Steelers and has played in 3 Super Bowls, has 2 Super Bowl rings, and is still in the Pittsburgh area. So I would love to reconnect with him as well.
Oh wow, yeah, that's a big career.
Yeah, he was definitely lucky because he was a backup most of the time, but he did play in all 3 of those Super Bowls and has the 2 rings to show for it, and had a great career. So, all right, well, let's jump into the business side of things. So let's start by just kind of having you tell us what SoftLedger is, why you started the company, and what you guys kind of do day to day for companies.
Sure, yeah. So we provide accounting software that helps growing companies operate more efficiently and make smarter decisions. And so that kind of came about when I was managing a few different areas in the accounting department for a small public company in Chicago. It took too long to get financial data every month. So it took too long to close the books. That process took weeks, even over a month sometimes. And that's the process that you need to do before you actually can get the financial data that you need to run the business. And so it seemed like a problem that could be solved with software. And Geoff, my co-founder, he had studied computer science at the University of Maryland. He'd been building applications since he was in high school. And so after some convincing, I got him to take a crack at, nights and weekends. We were trying to build a general ledger, and then that turned into, a little bit more serious and multiple iterations and, code rewrite or 2. And then we decided, okay, if we get some money from an investor to put in some money so we can do this full time, we'll give it a shot. And we did. And that was a little over 6 years ago. And that's when we moved out to Santa Monica.
Gotcha. So is that the one and only time that you've taken on capital?
No. Since then, we've taken on a number of other small investments. And then most recently, we raised a seed round that was $2.1 million in May of 2021. And that was led by Naples Technology Ventures. So they're our largest investor.
Gotcha. So at this point, what, if I can ask, what percentage do you and Geoff own of the company compared to private equity?
Sorry, yeah, not something we usually share publicly.
No worries.
Yeah, still a significant chunk. We're still in it to grow it as big as possible.
Great. All right. So accounting software for growing companies. So give us an idea of what that means. Who truly is the ideal customer for SoftLedger?
Sure. So usually what happens is the company's on a small business accounting system like QuickBooks, and that's largely the one we see. And the business grows, volume of transactions increase, and so with that comes complexity, and they ultimately need to bring on a experienced accountant. So it's usually when we come into the picture is they hire an experienced controller or accounting manager. Sometimes that's outsourced now. That's a trend that's been picking up. But they hire for that, and one of the first things is to choose a new accounting system at that point. And so that's where we come in. It's kind of like, you can get started on a small business system. It makes it easy for a non-accountant to use it, but at some point you need to have more of a mid-market system, which is kind of the category we fall into.
All right. So really it comes down to it may not be a revenue deal because there could be a volume of transactions at a pretty small revenue, depending on what kind of business. It's more about when it gets too complicated to do it yourself as a non-accounting professional.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a great point. That's why revenue hasn't been a great proxy for us of when the complexity comes. It's usually headcount, and we like to say between 50 and 200 employees is usually where we land, but that can come a lot sooner, just depending on the nature of your business.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of a company that I used to own pre-pandemic. The pandemic kind of finished it off, at least for me. I did actually sell the assets of the company, and they are operating again. But I owned a company that did that had kiosks in malls and provided, kind of a service there. And our average transaction was about $14.50. But we did about 700,000 a year in revenue. So you can see that there were quite a few transactions to get to that point. And so we had somebody who was handling the books, and I think one of them definitely did it on QuickBooks, but one of them I think used a different system. I just don't remember off the top of my head what it was.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great example of when dealing with physical goods. It's really important to track that. It's the lifeblood of the business. And so even at 700,000, if you lose 10% of the merchandise, that's directly into the bottom line. Whereas some other businesses, if it's like a more of a services business, sometimes it just doesn't. It's not that it's not important. I would always argue that it's really critical to think about your accounting as early as possible, but it's not directly stitched into like the operations of the company as much.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, I mean, you've already mentioned QuickBooks. There are other competitors out there. Xero's one that comes to mind. There are just these other really large, I guess, or I would even say entrenched competitors. So you guys are going up against them every single day. And that's why I made the parallel between the guy that was on before. He does the exact same thing. They have this product that they sell, and they're competing against like some of the largest companies in the world. And you're technically doing the same thing. So what do you guys do to compete with and beat them day in and day out?
Sure. So it's a great point. They don't have hundreds of thousands or even millions of customers in some cases for not having a good product. They clearly are serving a good niche there, or not niche, but it's there is this logical switching point, I think, for if you're going to move to the next tier up, and there are other mid-market accounting systems that address that. That is, and so I think providing a product-focused, easy to implement, or fast to implement, easy to learn is what we like to say, because it's just, I don't know, but by building a more product-focused accounting system where we're actively listening to customer feedback and trying to make everything as simple as possible, and not trying to build it to be overly complex. Like, we're never going to be this giant complex ERP. We want to, solve for a level of complexity that these customers have, but do it in as simple a way as possible, and not build in other stuff that we don't need. By doing that, we can provide this next step up in an easier. It's an easier way for them to get off their small business system, and that's what really does it. And so there are some key things that come up, like if you have multiple business units, so multiple entities, and you need to consolidate them. That's a key area where you can't really do that in the small business systems. But you could have a pretty small operation, not a ton of complexity in any one of your individual businesses, but you need to consolidate. And so do you really want to go to something that's going to require, you to hire a couple of accountants to manage it, and now you're managing a team to solve this problem that could be handled in potentially a more simple way, and that's really our sweet spot.
Gotcha. So it's really about the technology, really, right? Because technically you could hire an outsourced CFO or a bookkeeper or a controller, or bring it all in-house and do it with the other softwares that are available. Your contention is that your software is easier to use and easier to learn. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's right. And it just allows you to do, more with less. Yeah, that if you want to keep a lean operation and still and not have to hire additional people to do that, yeah, ours is a good option for being a next step up over those small business systems.
Yeah, and I think any business owner that's listening would say, I want to run a lean operation, right? We all know that headcount is typically the biggest expense that we have inside of an organization. And so if we can do it with fewer headcount, we will, because that just means that we're providing an additional profit or opportunity for reinvestment in the company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly the message that's been well received, especially over the past year or so. Managing cash, operating efficiently has been the name of the game.
Yeah. So when you came up with the idea really and approached Geoff, I mean, kind of tell us how that unfolded. I mean, you said you kind of convinced him, and you did allude to the fact that it was the frustration of waiting so long for financials at the job that you were currently at that kind of pushed this forward. But kind of give us the whole story. How'd you come up with it? How'd you convince Geoff? How long did it take? What were the early days like?
Sure. It's so we were the job I was working at the time. We were taking a bunch of data to put it into our general ledger, which is about 40 years old. It's now about 40 years old, a little over 40 years old since it was originally released. So old legacy system, that sort of thing. Excel and a spreadsheet-based process to get the data into it, do a bunch of manual things in the system that are pretty rigid to get the data then organized in the way you want to get it out, so that you could take an Excel spreadsheet and run a bunch of pivot tables to make the financials that we relied on every month. It just seemed insane to me that was the best process, because then I looked at other accounting systems out there, and we really selected for our budget the best option. The other systems couldn't really handle the kind of complexity that we had built into that process, so it was actually the best option as well. And so it kind of it seemed crazy that was the way that it had to be, and so I called up Geoff. I mean, we've been friends since freshman year of college, and so it's been a long time. And so yeah, when I guess kind of joke about convincing him, it just took a few different times of like, okay, here's what I'm thinking, and kind of laying out like a little bit more detail what it is, and so he kind of poked around with it for a bit, and we got something up enough that we felt like we had something, and then tried to convince someone to give us money to make it a reality, and that ultimately happened. So I'd say that was the initial idea, and like drawing, I mean, screens on a sheet of paper is almost 8 years ago, and so we were probably so what is that, like a year and a half of doing that about before we went full time with it.
Gotcha. So CPAs love their pivot tables, right? I mean, you're a CPA, you love to spend time in Excel and build pivot tables, but most people don't even know how to do it, right? And I would be hard pressed at this point. We spent some time in some accounting courses when I went to business school and had assignments where we had to do that. But I'd be hard pressed to be able to build any sort of a pivot table today that's going to do anything for me. I'm a pretty good Excel user, but building a pivot table is a whole nother level. And so, in my mind, again, I'm not a technology guy, but in my mind, what you built at SoftLedger is likely still kind of Excel based. Is that fair?
So we want to make it interoperable from the get-go. Is okay. We understand that Excel is going to be in the picture in your accounting close process. We get that. There's no way that as it stands, that's gonna, it's a great tool. It's very flexible. It's very standardized. All accountants know how to work with it. And so we thought, okay, we want to make this interoperable with Excel. But I wouldn't say it's Excel based. It's more if there's a calculation that's unique to your organization, or at least it's customized enough that you want to keep it in Excel, and that it seems to make the most sense, then we make it easy to upload that into the system, so you can get your transactions in easily. And then on the other side, we make it easy to you can filter and generate custom reports in the system, but at any point you can export pretty much any page to Excel, so that you can do what you need to there as well. And so we tried to take that interoperable approach, but there is a lot that is going on in the system. And as much as you can systemize certain processes, you should. It's just that some processes just don't make sense. Like, there's things like commissions calculations, or like there's all these little nuances to them, and a lot of times it just, Excel is the best place for that to live for many companies. And then at some point, if they grow and you need more controls over that process, you can choose a system and go through the process of getting all that codified into more of a system with controls. That could make more sense down the line. But especially as you're in your early stages, it can really just be the case that keeping a lot of these one-off things in Excel and just making sure that you can easily get them into your accounting system, that at least saves the step of like doing something manual in between, that then is an area for errors to pop up.
Yeah, no, I think that certainly makes it easier, right? Because if, like you said, if you're controlling something in Excel and it works for you and it's easy to track and you guys use it internally, and that's fine. But if you have to recreate that in the accounting software to be able to generate reports, that would be a pain. You're saying you can take whatever you built in Excel and upload it directly to your software.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, an example being, you have a billing process, or a way for populating your bills each month that you want to put together and send out to your customers. You could build that into Excel and have the first tab populate in our format and just upload that each time. And so you're just updating this file to get it all in. Or, you can, I mentioned Excel a lot because that's a way that'll work self-service easily. You don't need any technical skills, but you could do all this via our API as well, which a lot of our customers do. So you could actually build an integration, but for a lot of, especially small companies, that's just not an option to take that on.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty cool. So 8 years ago is when you kind of got the start. You guys are working nights and weekends. You and Geoff are building this, figuring out the technology, making sure that the accounting actually works, et cetera, et cetera. So fast forward to 2023, where are we now? How many people work? It sounds like you guys are 100% remote. So, how many states do you have employees in? How many employees do you have? What does the revenue look like? What does the growth look like day to day? We'd love to hear that part of the story.
Sure. Our team is, there's 11 of us full time. That's only it's eight different states and one international. And yeah, we have customers all over the world as well. Most of them are in the US, but a significant portion are outside the US. And yeah, we're growing, pretty steadily. We're not sharing revenue numbers or anything right now, but we have around 70 customers spread out all over the world.
Gotcha. And so you feel like this is the end all be all for Ben, or do you got something else that's going to bolt on to SoftLedger? What does that look like for you guys going forward?
Well, first and foremost, just growing the company as large as possible. That's the biggest thing. And yeah, I think that there's enough room to run in this area. This could be the thing for a long time. There's, like to say, the market starts with, every organization on the planet needs an accounting system, at least one. And so, obviously it's not the, designed for every single organization with all the nuances that exist in each industry, but the core general ledger concepts are kind of like in every accounting system, and so it's very general purpose to a lot of different industries. And so through that, there's a lot of places we've got a little bit of traction that we can continue to suss that out and serve more customers in those industries. So we got a lot of room to grow.
Yeah. Well, I'm no expert in terms of accounting software, but I do feel like, QuickBooks and Xero are the only two that I can come up with, right? Before SoftLedger, of course. And so I feel like it's ripe for disruption, if that's a fair way of putting it. But I also feel like there's a fair amount of evolution that could kind of go into accounting software. So just give us your thoughts on, you guys being a disruptor, and if you think the industry is ripe for that, and then kind of where you see your software and others evolving in the coming years.
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely true that there have been some stages of the evolution of accounting software. So I'll start going back to, so ours is a general purpose accounting system. That's the way how you describe it. And those started in the early 80s. They came to market in a big way. Prior to that, there were specific accounting systems for agricultural manufacturing processes. And the general purpose system, the idea was bring it all together in one place where you can get a single view of all your financials. And so that was step one, was do that. Step two, and this is kind of my very high level summary of what happened. In between, there's a lot of big changes that were made. But step two in this version is general purpose accounting system becomes cloud-based. And so this, more of a subscription model. You don't need to have your own servers. That was a big part of that. And then, when we started the company, we think that we're kind of at the start of this next evolution of accounting systems, in that it's cloud-based, but the architecture is what's called cloud native. And so it's, our application is a single page application that just talks to our API. And through that, it allows you to build systems that are much more connected easily to other systems, because it's very rare that your accounting system is going to be the single system for your business. The way that ours is designed makes it easy for our user interface is just talking to our API on the back end, in the same way as we have customers that have mobile applications that talk to our API. They have our user interface, they have their own user interface, and so there could be these multiple. If you think of a hub and spoke model, these multiple interfaces that could be communicating with the same system on the back end, and these are all ways of doing that just through a browser, through a mobile app, wherever in the world, all at the same time. And so we just think that structure for how you design an accounting system is going to be is part of this next evolution. There's more that goes with that, but for really any business process software, I think it's inevitable that it'll head in that direction.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, I think there's a lot that can happen from a technology standpoint. I know how APIs work. I know that that's essentially how different softwares talk to each other, but I don't fully understand what it is. So maybe for my benefit and the listeners, just kind of explain what it fully is and why it should matter to businesses.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly right. What you said, it's a way of interacting with the system. It stands for application programming interface. That's what it is. And so there are the more modern systems use what's called a REST API, which just makes it easier to communicate with another system. There's more standards that you know what to expect on this other side, and people are used to using those. And there's some older ones that you can still use to interact with other systems. There's just it just takes longer to do it. It's more error prone once you get the integration stood up with those. so the way our system works, and a lot of newer systems work, is when you're typing into to the browser-based application that you're, any application you're logging into via a browser easily. What you're doing is pushing, you click a button to add a new journal entry in our system, for instance, or a new bill. It's hitting our API, and the browser is just telling it how to do that. We've standardized how to do that in the browser. So when you're clicking the buttons around, it's just like communicating with the API. And so what that means is that if you're a third party that wants to, you like a bunch of the things in our system, but you don't need them all, or just you want to do something specific on your end, you could do the same thing as we did and just build an application that talks to our API. And so that concept kind of unlocks possibilities that weren't there before. And just I guess in summary, it just makes it so much easier and quicker to integrate with other third-party applications. And it's hard enough to build an integration with between two systems that have different people design these two different systems, and they made different decisions on how they're going to work. And there's always some shared concepts between them that work a little bit differently. And so getting them to talk together is just a nightmare, no matter what. And so anything you can do to reduce the friction in that process of having them communicate with each other just makes it a lot easier. And as that friction gets reduced, it just makes it so, all of these disparate systems feel like one system a lot more, which has big implications for, how efficiently a business can use them and their operations.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I try to think of my own business. The accounting side, I think, is going to get a little bit more complex for us here relatively shortly. But right now it's not overly complicated. But for us, with our service-based business, that API integration is crucial, right? I mean, being able to pull information from our CRM system and have it populating new account forms or billing forms or whatever it may be, so that we're not having to physically type in all that information in each different system is incredibly useful. And I can obviously see why that would be useful from an accounting standpoint as well.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, and you shouldn't have to be involved in the accounting processes. The things in accounting that should feed from operational data should get that automatically what they need. If there needs to be a review step, because it's, you don't want to automatically book journal entries in the accounting system, that makes sense. Maybe an accountant reviews it. And likewise, if you need to know what is the outstanding balance on a particular customer's account, you should just be able to pull that into the system that you're looking at, even though that is derived from the accounting system. So if all this is more connected, the ideal dream state is that everyone in the organization has access to the data that they need when they need it, if they should have access, in the place that they're actually, doing their job.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all about efficiency. So I think obviously that's on the right track. So I want to ask you about AI and Chat GPT, and that's big. You hear it all over the radio, all over the TV, everywhere online. So what do you think that's doing or will do to the accounting industry in the coming years?
I think we're in for some big changes. I do. I know, and it hasn't seemed that way to me before, but it seems like this, Chat GPT and similar technologies, it's gonna, there's a lot of accounting work is categorization of, what is this transaction? What does it represent to the business that I'm in? And so that's when you apply Chat GPT, just some early things I've seen around how it can categorize, it does that, it does that pretty well in some cases. There's a little bit of a struggle in what a transaction is. If you're just looking at a transaction on a bank statement, what that is, restaurant, there's a charge at a restaurant. You could say, okay, that's for food. We can assume that it's for meals and entertainment for an employee. Maybe you can do that. Okay, so we get past that first piece. Now, what is that? Is that an employee that was going out to sell something, or was it somebody in the legal department that was it was for an internal business event? There's additional context that's needed to say what that is to a business. And so there are definitely some things that you could apply that to. I bet in the not too distant future, it will start to improve some of that categorization. But the next level stuff will take longer. But I think if you can apply some structured data concepts to that, you can start to get there's some interesting things that could be unearthed. It's just that's like accounting already has a structure to it, and so I think that's where some of the trouble with just using ChatGPT to run through and guess and get it pretty well, or get a starting point, is good for some things. But when it comes to doing this very judgmental thing of saying, okay, this transaction is this way, it's this amount, it should go here on the financial statements, it's only currently or in the near term, I think, going to be useful as a starting point to help go from if every month you're going through your bank transactions and there's 100 of them and you need to code 100, maybe in 2 years you need to code 25 of them, and then in another 3 years after that, it's now you're just doing 5. I think that's kind of the realistic path forward for this. Is it just starts to chip away the repetitive things that can be automated. But I think it's going to be very disruptive to many accounting processes and other. There's just the number of things that have come up even in the past month have been pretty astounding.
Yeah. So I want to switch gears a little bit here and get your thoughts on maybe the direction of the company or what you think overall. But I think that there's this consolidation going on in a lot of different industries, accounting included, right? And so I think you've got a bunch, and I mean thousands and thousands of one-person CPA firms throughout the country, right? And they're just doing tax work, they're doing some bookkeeping, and it's, they have 1 or 2 staff people and then they make a decent living, but that's really kind of all there is. And so you've got these people who are going out and buying up all of these firms and putting them all together into one larger firm. Mm-hmm. And then, some of that's online bookkeeping, some of it's online tax, preparation, some of it's, both of them together. So first, just what do you think about the future of that? Do you think that that's going to continue? And then for SoftLedger, is that a target customer base for you guys to start to work with some of these online bookkeeping companies and sell like a commercial version of the software in addition to going directly company to company?
Oh yeah, so I have heard a lot about that. It's not, especially for the smaller practices, we don't delve into that too much. It's generally the firms that we have relationships with are do have outsourced accounting or controller services, and because we are kind of upmarket from the bookkeeping platforms, it's generally when a company's gotten big enough they've kind of outgrown those. Yeah, we have a number of firms that are working with our customers that have user accounts in SoftLedger that are in there every day or every week, and we continue to see partnerships with those firms to be a big way that we grow, and it's mostly around just helping them solve the problems for their customers and operate an outsourced accounting their outsourced accounting business more efficiently, as opposed to even reselling it. It's more about, okay, you're serving customers with multiple entities. and they don't want to move to a big ERP system, is this an option that would help you serve them efficiently, keep their business, keep them sticky? That's yeah, but I think that will continue to be a big way on, a big path for growth for us, especially, we're like we try to help our customers do more with less. We're trying to do the same thing. And the more advocates we can have that are serving our ideal customers that could be using SoftLedger to do so, that's really good for us.
Yeah. Well, I've got a meeting this afternoon with a guy who owns a pretty decently sized online bookkeeping firm, all remote, national. And so I'll mention it to him, see if he has any exposure to you guys, your product. I'm pretty sure they're using Xero right now. I'm not positive, but I'll bring it up to him and see what that leads to.
Okay, I appreciate it. Yeah, and it's tough. You're building an outsourced business. Margins can be pretty thin. It's all about operating efficiently, being able to provide good work at a fair price, and there's a lot of them out there, and so sometimes there's just different strategies for approaching that. So sometimes they're entirely a Xero shop. Sometimes they decide, okay, we're going to use whatever systems a company has. Sometimes there's a few different options they choose, but the rule is they have to be on the outsourced accounting operations tech stack. So yeah, definitely understand that. After talking to a number of them, sometimes it just doesn't make sense for us. But in a lot of instances, it can serve kind of an unmet need there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, definitely worth the conversation. And he's a former guest on the program as well. And we do everything that we can to connect our guests together and see if they can benefit from each other's wisdom or business or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah. So let's kind of wrap up here, Ben, with kind of your view of the future for SoftLedger. Like, I know you're not sharing revenue numbers, but kind of what's your timeline to get to a certain revenue number? Maybe you can share some goals or whatever you're comfortable sharing. We'd love to hear kind of what you see as the future. And then I'll have you wrap up by telling us what the word tycoon means to you.
Okay. So yeah, I guess for what's next for us is, we're a June 30th fiscal year end. And our goal this year was to get to profitability and generating free cash flow, which we are on track to do. So that was kind of the idea is, we've grown efficiently to date. We want to, do that in a way where we're in control of our own fate. If we're, deciding to be unprofitable for a bit or, dip into our cash, like that's a deliberate decision. And we're kind of operating at a stable, from a stable place. And so, yeah, just continuing to grow that way for a bit. In the future, we may raise some additional capital to grow quicker. That would be the goal there. But yeah, just continuing to grow our same user base and incorporate customer feedback as it comes up and just build this really, really happy base of customers and grow that way. That's been our kind of our focus from the get-go. And then Tycoon, I always think of the big ones from like Rockefeller and Vanderbilt and all that. With that's what that word really goes to. I feel like it's got to be a certain level of like dominating a bunch of different or one industry and just really being laser focused on doing that for a long time. So I don't know if I feel like I can start to really live up to the name of the show, but we'll give it a shot. Accounting software tycoon, that'd be good.
Yeah, no, I think that would be amazing, and you're definitely on your way if you're not there already. But When we started the show, that was kind of the same thought process, right? You think of railroad tycoon, from like Monopoly or whatever. But like you said, the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, those names kind of come to mind. And it's a word that just isn't used as much today. And for me, when we kind of chose this to go with, as the name of the show, the big thing for me was, the reality is if you turn on the news or you go to social media or wherever it is that you get your information today, there are certain people that we know, right? Like we know their names. We know Bill Gates, we know Steve Jobs, we know, those types of people that have built these monstrous companies, right? And sometimes we even know not just the founders or the visionaries of those firms, but we know the executive team members as well, right? Now, Paul Allen's not as well known as Bill Gates, for example, but Paul Allen was a really important part of that story. And they even had another partner that ended up having to pull out very early on. So, the point is, those people are very, very well known, but there are just as capable executives and founders that are running smaller organizations that are run very, very well, that are super smart people, that are definitely visionary, but they're working in an area that may or may not ever become as big as an Apple or a Microsoft or a Facebook or, any of that kind of stuff. But they're extremely competent, smart individuals that should be celebrated. And that's why we call the show Tycoons of Small Biz. And the backbone of the American economy is the small business owner, which means something different to everybody, right? Sometimes it's 100 employees or less. Sometimes it's 100 million in revenue or less. Doesn't really matter what your definition is, but we want to celebrate the backbone of the American economy. And so we put on Tycoons of Small Biz, and it's a pleasure to have tycoons like yourself on every week.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and this is fun.
Yeah. All right. So Ben, tell those who are listening how they can get in touch with you if they have need of accounting software for their business or whatever the case may be. What's the best way to get in touch with SoftLedger and you personally?
So our website is a great place to see more about us. YouTube channel's got some videos on the product and everything. If you want to reach me, it's my email is ben@softledger.com. So feel free to get in touch.
Awesome. Really appreciate the time, Ben. Really appreciate your insights on the accounting industry as a whole and what you guys are building at SoftLedger.
Thanks. Yeah, appreciate it.
You've been listening to Tycoons of Small Biz, a podcast for small business owners by small business owners. Join us next week for an introduction to another great tycoon, and be sure to follow us on our social media channels for links to all of our episodes and great content.